Hello and welcome to the course. I'm your host today, Julie, and I'm speaking with Professor Heather Zheng from the Department of Computer Science. Professor Zheng is a Neubauer Professor of Computer Science at the University of Chicago, and her research focuses on mobile computing, security and privacy, adversarial machine learning, network, and systems. Her work has been featured by the MIT Technology Review as one of the 10 emerging technologies in 2006, and she is an ACM Fellow and IEEE Fellow. She is MIT TR35 certified, and she currently co-directs the university's SAND lab. She is here to talk to us about her career path and how she became a University of Chicago professor. Welcome to the course, Professor Zheng.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie.
Can you start us off by telling me a little bit about who you are, what your focus is in your research, and tell me a little bit about your career path? How did you come to the University of Chicago?
Okay, so I'm currently a faculty of computer science at University of Chicago. I co-direct the SAND lab, Security, Algorithm, Networking, and Data at U Chicago, together with Professor Ben Zhao. My research focus kind of evolved over time, but recently I've been working mainly focused on mobile computing, IoT sensing, and focus on implication of security and privacy, and also working on security and privacy issues related to deep learning systems. My past to U Chicago, I have a pretty long past. I came to University of Maryland College Park for my PhD degree long time ago. And then after that, I joined Bell Labs wireless research as a researcher. After about 4.5 wonderful years there, learned a lot. I moved to Microsoft Research Asia to work on more system and networking related research. And there, I was able to interact with a broad set of students. I was able to mentoring for a long term. And then that kind of made me wanted to actually go back to academia to become a faculty. And then I moved to University of California, Santa Barbara, and to become a faculty there. Spent a wonderful, I think it's 12 years there. And then I moved to U Chicago as a current faculty at computer science. So I have a mixture of both industry and academic experience.
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious to hear what you wanted to be or thought you would be when you were younger. What were some of your career aspirations when you were even like middle high school? What were you hoping to be when you were younger?
So my high school experience is a little bit different. I skipped most of the high school kind of for 2 years and went into a gifted program at the college in Xi'an Jiaotong University in China at the age of 15. And there I was exposed to a broad set of topics, and that made me very interested in terms of pursuing further research. I like the freedom of the research and being able to explore different directions. So right upon graduation, I went to University of Maryland College Park to pursue a PhD. My PhD, I did not do any master, so I finished rather quickly, and then I went into Bell Labs research. I think I didn't really know what exactly I wanted to do. I think a lot of times opportunity came. I wanted to be a researcher that I know, but the specific topic, I didn't really have a strong opinion. I like networking and wireless communication at that time. So when I was my PhD, I did kind of interdisciplinary research between media transmission and wireless networking. And then I went to my Bell Labs. I was working more upon the networking issues of taking the application domain specific knowledge and try to incorporate that into the networking system. So I guess if you really want me to summarize my general interest or what's driving me is I really like research problem that's able to integrating practical impact doing kind of an innovation rather than incremental improvement. And so that's been driving me for many years until today in terms of my research.
Looking back on your career, or either when you were still a student or throughout your career, was there any particular person or a couple of people who really supported you? Were there important mentors who really helped you along the way?
Yeah, I think there are a lot. My PhD advisor basically gave me a lot of freedom to explore my own research and send me to various different conferences where I did not really have publication at that time. So kind of opened up my eyes in terms of, what's going on in this field, especially as somebody hasn't really done any research or published any papers in that then. And when my paper get rejected, he basically encouraged me just to work on these and telling me, I still remember one thing he told me is that opinion from others does not really matter. You need to work on your own record. That's more important. So focus on your own kind of a self-strength rather than focus on other people's opinion about you. So I thought that was I still remember that until today. I was telling all my students about that. That's what you need to remember. So you just need to keep working on the stuff you believe in rather than, trying to get approval from external opinions. And then at Bell Labs, I learned a lot from the depths and the discussion from, from all my colleagues who are all very senior and much older than me. So I remember my first department presentation. I was only able to present maybe 2 or 3 slides. One is the title, and then everybody start discuss, and then it's very interesting that how much feedback and how much interesting directions that you can explore when you start from a simple direction. So I learned the richness of the research, the openness about research in my experience there. Yeah, I think a different workplace, even for Microsoft Research, very different style compared to Bell Labs. So everywhere I feel like I benefit a lot from the diversity and flexibility offered by different places. And I think that gave me a lot of rich experience, but also broadened up my perspective about research and about interdisciplinary research. I think that's that experience I very much appreciate and treasure as well.
I'm curious about your experience of getting introduced to computer science and into the world that you would eventually focus on. Was there a class that you took? How did you really get interested in the specific area of study that you are currently pursuing?
Right. I think the transition from Bell Labs to Microsoft Research kind of made me feel like I'm a better fit for the CS research, particularly because of problems that I chose. And I'm more towards the system C, like system domain research. That kind of changed my mind that I'm a better fit for CS. So I'm EC by training, electrical engineering by training, but I now work a lot in the CS domain. To me, I don't think there's, at least in the area that I work on, I don't think there's a clear boundary between the two emphases. I have a lot of wonderful colleagues who made a lot of important contribution in my field. They're in ACE. So I don't think there's a very big boundary between the two right now. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can speak about any challenges or resistance you faced in your career, an obstacle you had to overcome, or a time of self-doubt. What were some of the challenges that you faced in your career, and how did you kind of push past them?
I think at different stage of the career, the challenges start to change. I'm still facing challenge these days. I think the challenge when I was young is how do I kind of figured out how do I actually concentrating my energy on the specific area and try to lead or this particular area? How do I become a leader in this particular technical area? What are the key problems we should work on, especially as an academic? I think in industry, a lot of time it's relatively easier to find problem. A lot of times the problem was actually presenting to you. But when you transition to an academic, you're gonna have to find these problems yourself, and being able to understand or predict the impact of these problems, especially when you're trying to choose between different problems to work on. I think that's the key thing. I think my way of solving that is a lot of time I feel like my own life experience or my own experience in daily life can give me a lot of clue about what I should work on as a normal user. So if you immerse yourself into this particular field, for example, I work on security and privacy. And so I'm a very private person myself. So this is actually a perfect topic for me. And a lot of time I feel like in my life, or to protect the people around me or related to me, what are the key things I can do to help? I think these tied to the practical ground has me a lot in terms of choosing the problem I want to work on. I think that's the key thing. And then still today, I try to use that as a way to find new problems. And the other challenge I face is, as an educator, how do I help my own student, my advisees to grow into successful researcher? And it's not like you have a blanket kind of advising policy or advising kind of a skills. You kind of have to adapt that with individual person. So I think that's another challenge that every educator faces, and we are working constantly to address that challenge one person at a time, or one student at a time.
Yeah. You mentioned briefly the experience of when you were working at Bell Labs and wanting to transition over to academia and to working with students. Can you tell me more about that experience? What really clicked for you? What made you really want to go back to working with students?
Right. When I graduated from my PhD, I didn't really think I'm suitable. I remember I had this discussion with my advisor, and I told him I didn't want to do faculty because I don't feel I can advise other people. Maybe at that time I was just too young. I graduated about 24 years old, barely 24. So I feel like I'm very young and I can't really advising people. At Bell Labs, and I did not really have a lot of time with, because you usually get a summer intern, but after about 3 months, they are gone, right? So at Microsoft Research, where I have students who work with me like a year round. So they have these programs that you can work with a local university student in an entire year. So that gave me I think I've mentored about 4 or 5 different students within the 1 year I have there. It's very different. It gave me a taste about advising students, but maybe at that time I'm also more ready compared to before with all the experience I've gained so far. And then I feel like, hey, I can do this. I mean, this is very cool. You can work with students, and I like that experience. So that's why I went back to academia. But people always ask me in various panels and various conversations, what's the difference between academic industry and why did you choose this rather than that? I think this is a very personal decision. It really depends on the state that you are in at that particular decision time. And for me, I chose academia because that time I really love to work with the student. And I feel like I can also have more freedom of choosing the topics I have, but that's a typical academia opportunity, but also challenges how to choose them. But I think in general, this really is a very personal decision, depends on the state you're in and the opportunity you have at that particular time. I think I can see the good and bad, or the opportunity and the challenges facing each of them. For me, personally, I like academia better because of the interaction with the student and the freedom of choosing and changing my research area over time.
Can you expand on that idea of it really depends on the state that you're in and the things that you're interested in, especially since a lot of our audience are students who are trying to figure out what career path they might want to take. What are some of the reasons why one might pursue industry versus academia and vice versa?
I think a lot of time is basically you need to understand ideally what does each job require you to do, and do you have the passion to want to actually face these, to embrace the opportunity but also face the challenges it chose. And a lot of time it's based on the personality. If you want to see a very immediate impact about your actions, a lot of students tell me about that. I want to see myself realized immediately. Then industry is much faster path. Industry also give you a lot of experiences and access to the problem, to the real life problems or system that's operating or supporting everything, rather than a lab setting environment, which academic usually deal with when we actually trying to evaluate the problem. But right, so I think that's the general difference between the two. But if you want to say, I wanted to do a bit more research and study that is kind of a different from what the current path, industry path, or maybe I want to do something maybe industry hasn't really considered, but should have considered, should consider it 5 to 10 years, then I think academia is a good way of implementing that mindsetting as well. So I think it really depends on, at this particular stage, what do you want? But my advice when people ask a similar question to me is to the young folks is that you can always change. Like me, I changed in the middle of it. I changed the job multiple times. It's a 2-time international move. I think the folks, it's like you are able to change. It is not like the decision you make right now is gonna basically stick to you for the entire of your life. I think there's always opportunity to change if you feel like the current one no longer fits you. That's always been my mindset as well. And it at least for me, worked out pretty well. You can only make the decision that's suited for you right now, which when you are ready. At that time, I just don't feel I'm ready to be a faculty. But if some folks feel like I'm ready, I want to do this. I have students went directly from PhD to faculty, and they're doing so well. We're very proud of them. But at that time, they feel they're ready. There are students who are not ready, and they are going to industry, and their path after that can also change as well. So I think my advice to younger folks is just don't stress yourself too much making the decision right now, thinking that you never be able to change. There are always opportunity to change different field, but you need to be clear about what you need right now, rather than listen to everybody else. You have to ask yourself whether you want to do this job or not, and whether it will make you happy or not. Yeah.
What would you say is one of the more fun things about your current job at the University of Chicago? What is really enjoyable for you?
Discussing new things and wild things with my students. Not just my PhD student, I have also undergrads and master students, hearing their ideas, being able to get involved with their work and encourage them to seek more. That's my joy these days.
Are there any particular memories that come to mind recently of an idea that felt, or a moment where you had with a student where it felt like you were really able to expand on an idea or learn something new or teach something new?
I have so many examples. I don't want to really say a specific one, but I think if I do a high level summary is being able to see the growth of the student over time, seeing them from the year 1, and then you see whether they're in the year 4 and 5, and you can tell the mature, and then how they grow into an independent researcher with vision. And I think that's so much joy for me. And the other thing is, I think beyond on the student one is also see the research of our stuff can actually help other folks immediately as well. So generating practical impact to help other folks immediately. And a lot of time we receive these individual emails, either just ask us questions and from not from a university student or a PhD student, but from general users. And then I think those are also very satisfying as well.
Is there anything about your current role that is sometimes not as fun or a little challenging or tedious? What are some of the parts of your job that are hard for you?
That's a good question. Time. I think manage time. As I become senior, there are a lot of responsibilities in internal, external, many different directions. Sometimes I have to say no to stay effective for myself, and I think that's the tougher one. But I think as I get older, learning to say no is becoming an important, I would say, skill set. Know when to say no is becoming a skill set that people need to be able to grasp as we get older. Yeah.
Is there anything in your career at this moment that you are really aspiring to do or hoping to do? What are your kind of hopes for the future at the moment?
My recent research, we start to focus on how do we empower end users in response to the sensors, the algorithm that's working around us. And they are doing a great job in terms of satisfying, providing certain very useful functionality. But some of those are being also leveraged or being weaponized to go against individual user. And there's a power symmetric between the technology and the individual user, because user also often feel kind of powerless against these giant wave of technology surrounding us. So my current research and goal is trying to, with me also as an individual user, how do we empower the user to navigate through the benefits and also the potential misuse of technology against us. I think that's something that's really empowered me to move on along those directions.
Do you have any other advice specific? I know we've kind of talked about advice for people who are interested in maybe pursuing an academic field, but advice you'd have for someone who is particularly interested in pursuing an academic field in CS in your area? What advice would you encourage a young person to focus on or explore or do in their undergraduate or early graduate career if they're interested in pursuing a career similar to yours?
I think being able to find opportunity to work with local research team or any research team to work on some of these problems would really be beneficial. So my suggestion for folks, for undergrad student or high school student, is finding opportunity to work with some research group on some on their research task, and being able to involve early on give you a real experience and taste about the research and specific type of research, so that you get to know whether I like these or not. So you have to experience those yourself in order to really understand what is needed, and whether you like it, and whether you are fitted for this particular challenge. I think have early on hands-on experience is crucial, or it's I should not say crucial, very beneficial, because you have to it's almost like a shoe fitting. You're gonna have to fit into the shoe yourself to know whether this is good or bad, it's fit or not fit. So having these experiences would really, really help.
Our last question for the day is, what do you think is the most gratifying part of your current job at the University of Chicago as in your current professor role? What is most gratifying to you?
There are multiple, the flexibility of choosing the specific topic or the research areas, and being able to think ahead on the years before us, before the current year, so that we can look at both short-term and long-term problems. I think that flexibility is very very attractive to me, being academia. And the second one is working with my wonderful set of students who also inspire me, empower me to do my job right. And also my colleagues around me. I feel this kind of research community is very, very treasure to me, to be able to move, just like sit on the wave with everybody and be part of it.
Yeah, well, that is all the time we have today. Professor Zheng, thank you for your time and thank you for speaking with me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you again, Professor Zheng, for your time today. And course takers, if you enjoyed listening to today's interview, please check out the other ones. Leave us a comment, subscribe, follow, and share this episode with your friends and family. You can find out more about the University of Chicago through uchicago.edu or the university's campus in Hong Kong through uchicago.hk. Stay tuned for more. See you around.